Dear residents of the Friendly Home Assisted Living Community Center, firstly, let me say that while I am legally compelled by the terms of my parole to write this apology, it is entirely of my own desire to explain the unfortunate events of March 7th, 2010. Now, to properly understand why I was briefly hospitalized and then incarcerated goes far beyond the same reasons why your community's hot tub was out of service for 15 days. Indeed, the path that led me to being dubbed the hot tub hollerer by our city's quaint excuse for a newspaper actually began months prior, on June 24th of 2009 to be precise, when I had the misfortune to make the acquaintance of Jessica. Now, Jessica was a girl out of my league. I cannot in good faith proclaim ignorance to this fact. If it had been otherwise, I might have acted with some degree of moderation. And I could say here that the writing on the wall is always more visible in retrospect, but the truth is that I could even read it by the dim lights of the venue in which we met, a French Quarter-themed gay bar named Bourbon Street. But for whatever reason, Jessica was paying attention to me that night and laughing at my jokes. I like to make people laugh, so I took an opportunity to better my lot, and here I am. Now, what followed from our rendezvous cannot be described as a date so much as a Hefeweizen-fueled sexual debacle best reserved for the after-hours programming of Animal Planet. I watch a lot of Animal Planet. I watch a lot of Animal Planet, and I could not get the similarities out of my head the entire night. See, this is my problem in a nutshell. I understand animals and technology and science. I do not excel at people. And where other men, perhaps men better at being men, some might say, they might have taken some security from spending an evening with a beautiful woman, I only felt the beginnings of dread. The one exchange I can remember with any clarity from that night haunts me to this day. I had asked Jessica on the drive to her place how she had accumulated so much confidence in her brief 25 years on this earth. She just laughed, of course. I mean, what else was she going to do? Girls who have confidence don't think about where it comes from. So she made a joke out of it, which was this, and I quote, well, my mom says all the women in our family have tiny pussies, and ha 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 ha, how we laughed, oh how we laughed, but it wasn't a joke. She was being entirely honest. I mean, I don't mean to be crude. It wasn't entirely physiological, of course not. It was her, but that night with her made the memory of every prior lovemaking feel more akin to fishing scraps out of a garbage disposal than it was to what I discovered was possible with her that night. Yeah, look, I've been with other girls before. I mean, don't think that I'm that much of some sort of social recluse, but I had come to narrow my definition of girls to those girls that would like me, who I could be with, girls that people would look at me with and say, well, that makes sense, but with whom I personally felt no real excitement. And Jessica was not supposed to be one of those girls who would be with me, but yet here we were, and the experience was it was every bit as wonderful as I had convinced myself that it couldn't be. And so I'm not going to bore you with the details of what happened next. Maybe the timer just went off in Jessica's head and she moved on as she always will, or if you'll indulge with me some pop psychology, maybe living in terror of ruining what I had drove me to ruin it just for the relief it would bring. We will never know. But in either case, I'm sure it will sound to your wise old ears as just a pedestrian heartbreak. So instead, I implore you, my senior citizen friends, to just take a minute and remember the joy with once you bit into an apple with a mouthful of teeth that time has since taken from you. This was my state after a fashion when Jessica left, and there was no relief. Then there was no substitute. So I succumbed to the advice of a man I once, but no longer will refer to as my friend, and together we together turned to drink. which was working at the height of it until I reached the pinnacle of my inebriation, roughly around 1 a.m., and I was abandoned by said friend no more because he had decided on a whim that, and here I quote again, his ex-girlfriends needed to be reminded that chickens come home to roost. After which I was left to wander on foot throughout your neighborhood, which, as I'm sure, being wise, you have guessed, is when I discovered your community center and its courtyard hot tub. Contrary to what the prosecution in my case claimed so cynically, I entered said hot tub with no ulterior motive in my whiskey-soaked mind other than to escape the chill that had descended upon our city in the early morning hours. So imagine my surprise, if you will, when, after starting the jets and enjoying the warmth, I felt a sensation that mimicked the presence of Jessica. And I turned, half expecting her to be there, but found only the small, powerful vent of a hot tub jet. And what happened next, we have all read about in that local rag that masquerades as our newspaper, so I will not repeat it here, but just allow me to add some much-needed editorializing that does not include the word pervert or that $2 phrase coined recently, appliance eroticism. Let me instead just ask you this simple hypothetical question. If life takes away that which it will not give back, can we blame someone for indulging in a cheap facsimile? Must all men be stoics to deserve our pity? I will leave all of you here tonight to answer that for yourselves, but I can say with authority that machines know no pity, like that hot tub, because it was capable of running on a timer that far exceeded my own. And it would not allow me to leave once I had entered it. And here again, I was reminded of Jessica in more ways than one. But I tried. No, please, that I tried. First with just brute physical strength, and then with my mind. I was even reduced to enacting a childish game I had coined in high school to banish unwanted erections by enumerating inappropriate names for bars, like the Forgotten Grandpa, the Dangerous Steak, the Flatulent Postman, on and on and on it went. But the hot tub went longer, and until I just broke. I broke. I was weak. I cried out for help, but all I received was firemen, and with them, police officers. The rest is now known to all of you and unnecessary for me to repeat, but in closing, beyond my heartfelt sadness that you and your delightful community were affected by a woman you will hopefully never have the misfortune of meeting, I wish to leave you now with just these words. A wise man once said that it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. But I would add that absolute certainty, I would add, that we are all just a whiff of familiar perfume, or the sound of a laugh at too familiar of an octave, or the claustrophobic embrace of a hot tub vent, from having even the wisest among us reduced to fools. Sincerely, Justin Hudnall.